event. We're going to start off with a Kahoot quiz. So, all right, our first question is on the screen. How much additional revenue can governments expect globally by 2040 from mining energy transition minerals? Oh, you're fast. 10 seconds left. All right, the correct answer was 100 to 500 billion, and 14 of you got it right. Not too shabby. All right, oh, there we go. Lisa's at the top, and then we have AB, Oslo, Janine. Yeah, there we go. Janine and Ariel. Next. What is the estimated pace of demand increase for minerals like cobalt, lithium, and graphite by 2040? 2040 is a big year. For those who are joining too, the information on how to get on the quiz is below. All right, so most common answer was correct, an increase by at least 500%. Lisa's keeping her lead. Next, which of the critical minerals will be most in demand in the course of the energy transition? All right, 5 seconds left. Copper. This was not a popular response, but it is indeed copper. And we have a new leader on the scoreboard, Richard, coming in. Don't worry, Lisa, you're only in second place still. All right. We debated if the panelists could do this. Among the following countries, which one has the largest known reserves of cobalt, making up 48% of the world total? You got 10 seconds left. If you've just joined, you can still, it's not too late to get in. The information's on the bottom of the screen. All right, and we got a majority of the responses here. It is indeed Democratic Republic of Congo. And Lisa's back up top. It's all right, Richard, you're not far behind. You just gotta be a little quicker. All right. Next, in 2019, what percentage of refined cobalt and lithium production was accounted for by the People's Republic of China? There we go. Most popular answer, 50 to 70%. That's correct. And Janine for the pulls ahead. Okay, in more than 100 corruption cases in the extractive sector, what was the most common red flag that appeared? These are truncated a little bit, but hopefully you'll get the meaning. The suspense. 5 seconds. All right, not a particularly popular answer, or common answer. Providing payments, gifts, or favors to a politically exposed person who has influence over the selection process was the most common red flag. Let's see how our scoreboard looks, and it's Richard's come back up, and I don't know if it's Leah or Elia. We have a new second place on the podium, or we're shifting around a little bit. Okay, which mineral has the highest percentage of the world's reserves located in countries with high levels of corruption? 10 seconds. This is a hard one. This is from a Transparency International report. I'll give you the sources at the end. It is not cobalt. It is rare earth elements. How's our scoreboard looking? Richard's back up top. Oh, we have a new third place. We got some new contesters here. What percentage of rare earth elements reserves are in countries with high levels of corruption? Also from the same TI report. We got 10 seconds. This is not a hint, by the way. The neodymium is not a hint. It's just a fun little look of a rare earth element. It is indeed 94%. I think you're getting the picture that we're trying to paint here. Our scoreboard, Leah's back up top, and now we have JB for second, and Janine's come back on. All right, this is a real nail biter team. What is the illegal mining and corruption risk level according to the Peruvian National Money Laundering Risk Assessment? Second to last question, so this is important. The stakes are high. We got 5 seconds. Nobody's listening to the music. I didn't turn the music on mine because I didn't want to, some people need to concentrate. Very high, that is correct. The most popular answer and alarming. Our scoreboard is looking like we have a new winner, Kate or K8, I like this, Richard, and then Ariel. Wow, the podium is up for grabs. Second to last question, I think, or maybe last question. Yeah, the last question. What crimes does the legal framework of beneficial ownership help to prevent? All of the above, this is correct. So none of you are wrong. Here are the sources for the quiz. I'm happy we can go into them in more detail, but let's really get to what we all want to know. Who is on the podium? Ariel in third place. And in second, we have Richard, who is first. Dun, dun, dun. Kate is number one. So afterwards, our colleagues from GIZ and True Collaboration have brought some extremely tasty German treats. So please come up afterwards and we will be feeding you sugar. In the interest of time, I'm not going to go in, you don't need to hear it from me, you heard it from the statistics. The points we're trying to make is a very critical issue at a very critical juncture. We can't wait. And so we're going to start this session with some scene-setting remarks by our colleague from EITI, the Extractive Industry Transparency Initiative, and then we're going to move into some discussion around solutions, including what has worked in gold mining. So without further ado, I'd like to now welcome Bady Baldé, the Deputy Executive Director of EITI, for some scene-setting remarks. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Brooks, and this is such a wonderful way to start a session as well and get the audience engaged. And thanks to GIZ and all colleagues who have contributed in preparing for this session. Thanks for the opportunity to address you this afternoon and the good attendance in an afternoon after long conference already. Since much of the point has been actually the factual point has been made, which is wonderful as part of the quiz. Hopefully that will allow me to go quicker on what I have to say here. As Brooks mentioned, I'm speaking on behalf of the EITI, which is the global standard for transparency and good governance in natural resource management. Now, one of the points I think that comes across in this quiz is the magnitude of challenge facing us in the context of energy transition. As we navigate through this energy transition, addressing corruption risk in this sector becomes absolutely urgent. So we have heard a lot of statistics about the growing demand for minerals and the risks, but there are also opportunities. If we get this transition right, it's also an opportunity to support sustainable development, especially funding for SDGs, from $100 to $500 billion in additional revenues to government, often government that would urgently need such resources, that channeled correctly would help achieve SDGs. So it's a good agenda, a good ambition that helps us achieve many things at the same times. Now, we all know that the extractive sector vulnerability to corruption is well documented, so we don't need to elaborate too much on that here. But perhaps just to recap a little bit, it's essentially a situation that arises from when state actors transact in high value assets, high commodities, on behalf of their citizens, often employing complex financial structures in opaque environments with inadequate oversight. What could go wrong? So while these vulnerabilities are heightened by weak institutions, we also need to recognize that this is not a challenge that is only limited to weak institutional environments. So for example, illegal resource extractions and mineral smuggling tend to occur in countries experiencing political instability, conflict, or these areas that we call high-risk areas. However, there are many types of issues, such as manipulated bidding processes, hidden ownerships, undue political interference in both licensing as well as in management of state-owned enterprises, illicit flows in commodity trading, revenue mismanagement. Those are all examples of issues that can arise that across the board can happen anywhere, regardless of the jurisdictions. So there has been ample discussion in the last few days on the devastating impact of corruptions on societies and the environment. So I will save you that. I'm not going to repeat all those points. I will just add the following. We cannot achieve a just, orderly, and equitable transition without combating corruption in the mining sector. It's an urgent and essential task that we have before us. This is why, in collaboration with the Sustainable Mineral Institute, which is an institute housed in the University of Queensland in Australia, we published last year a report which we call Mission Critical. In fact, many of the answers to the question to your quiz this afternoon come from that report. So if those of you have read that report, would have done very well. We highly recommend it. You can Google it and find it on our website. It's EITI Mission Critical Report. It's easily readable. Unlike all our other highly technical reports, this one you can read it. I can promise you that. So perhaps I was asked to set out a little bit more what we do to tackle this issue. So at the EITI, we have a three-pronged approach to combating corruption. First is what we call good old follow the money reporting. It can sound overused sometimes, it's not new, but it's still essential. The second is comprehensive disclosures of non-financial information. I can say a few points about that in a moment. But thirdly, it's fostering multi-stakeholder dialogue at the national and subnational level. These are our three approaches we try to bring to bear in combating corruption in this sector. So on reporting, on financial reporting specifically, this is an area where now we have extensive experience, wide range of evidence on how to do this. In fact, over the last 2 decades, EITI member countries have published about 500 reports which independently verify revenues, to government exceeding $3 trillion across 50 member countries. It's tedious work, but it's necessary work. So the second is on disclosure of non-financial information. And here, in collaboration with USAID, the BHP Foundation, we launched a program 2 years ago that we call Opening Extractive. And it's a program that helps us advance transparency in beneficial ownership. And we work closely with Open Ownership to provide support to our member countries, including countries ranging from Armenia, Colombia, Ghana, Indonesia to Zambia, in building open and reliable and accessible registers for the public. But what is also interesting in this project is that thanks to the collaboration with Open Ownership, it allows us to get out of the silos. So in a way, in many cases, you will see that those registers are actually, they go beyond the extractive sector. They include, in some cases, other sectors, and in other situations, they include the entire, it's a whole of economy approach. Then lastly, we realized more than a decade ago that transparency is absolutely necessary in combating corruption, but it is not sufficient. So this is why we have in all our member countries a multi-sector group that brings together civil society, media, companies, relevant state entities that seek to foster meaningful dialogue to achieve accountability. And this is essential. So with the energy transition, as we are now intensifying this effort, and we launched more recently a program in collaboration with USAID, which seeks to, we call the program Countering Corruption in the Extractive Sector, but what it is trying to do is to support all our member countries in implementing the new provisions in the standard, which are specifically designed to foster our effort and accelerate our work in mitigating the risk against corruption in the entire value chain. So to conclude, I would say that this challenge is not new. It is a well-documented case. We have many tools in our toolbox to address it. So in that sense, it's encouraging, it's doable. However, we should also recognize that there is no silver bullet in addressing this issue. We need a multi-pronged approach, and we need collaboration across many actors to achieve sustainable results in this area. So at the EITI, we look forward to working with all of you in the coming years to tackle this challenge and contribute in achieving our mission, which is to help make these natural resources benefit humanities while also investing in sustainable development. Thank you.
Thank you, Bady, very much. As you have heard now, we have learned more about the current trends and risks in the field of critical minerals. However, before we look into specific or practical tools on how we can actually engage those, let's take a step back. And as Bady has already mentioned here as well, we do have a lot of experience in that field already. And that's why it's a pleasure for me to introduce you Giancarlo Leon Collazos from the General Consul of Peru, who in Peru itself, the colleagues have already worked quite a long time on the topic of illegal gold mining, and especially related to the topics of corruption and money laundering. And there's a lot of lessons to be learned on how to deal with those topics, also related to critical minerals. So without further ado, let me hand over to Giancarlo. Thank you.
Thank you, Sophie. First of all, I would like to thank GIZ and the organizers for convening this important meeting and for giving Peru the opportunity to contribute to such an important topic. In this occasion, I'm pleased to introduce my colleague Fernanda García-Yrigoyen Maúrtua, Head of Prevention, Liaison and Cooperation Department of the Peruvian Financial Intelligence Unit of the Superintendents of Banking, Insurance and AFP, who will share some lessons learned in Peru to prevent corruption, illegal mining and money laundering. Ms. García-Yrigoyen has more than 20 years of work experience in these issues. She was co-chair with Canada and the Americas Regional Review Group of the International Cooperation Review Group of the Financial Action Task Force. She was also been member of various commissions and interinstitutional working groups on the prevention of money laundering and financing of terrorism, among other responsibilities. I'm really convinced that we all will benefit from her presentation. Thank you.
First of all, I want to thank the United Nations for the opportunity to be able to talk about the lessons learned and measures taken to address emerging risk of illicit financial flows from illegal gold mining and corruption in Peru. My name is Fernanda García-Yrigoyen, and I am the head of the Prevention, Liaison and Cooperation Department of the Financial Intelligence Unit of Peru, and I will be in charge of this presentation. As you know, the first recommendation of the 40 recommendations of the FATF establishes that countries must identify, assess, and understand their money laundering and TF risk. In Peru, we have done several national risk assessments in money laundering. The first one in the year 2010 with the technical assistance of the IMF, and the second one in the year 2016 with the technical assistance of the IDB. The last one was done in the year 2021 with the help of the German government through GIZ. These assessments are done frequently because ML and TF risk are constantly changing. In the three risk assessments, corruption is a very high money laundering risk in Peru. Illegal mining started to appear in our 2016 National Risk Assessment. And by the year 2021, corruption and illegal mining are considered very high risk for money laundering, and illegal drug trafficking passed to be a high risk. In order to mitigate the risk identified, which include illegal mining and corruption, in our last national risk assessment, a new policy against money laundering by the year 2030 is under development. Currently, we are also working in a national risk assessment for TF and PF. Peru has done 4 money laundering final convictions report, being the last one from 2012 to 2021. These reports help us to understand the money laundering risk in Peru through final convictions, organize our supervision of reporting entities, our money laundering training, and gives information to the different stakeholders that participate in the fight against money laundering. As you can see, the convictions in the years 2018 and 2021 are the highest. The convictions include 175 convictions, which include also 306 natural persons and 6 legal persons. The main predicative offenses according to the convictions are illicit drug trafficking, crimes against property, corruption, crimes against the state, and environmental crimes. Recommendations 24 and 25 of the FATF recommendations establish that countries must know the beneficial owner of their legal persons and legal entities. As you know, this would be the last natural person that owns or controls directly or indirectly a legal person or entity. This is a very important mechanism to prevent corruption, illegal mining, and money laundering. Peru has its regulation since the year 2018. This regulation establishes the obligation to declare the beneficial owner of legal persons and legal entities, creates a database in charge of the tax administration, gives access to this information to the competent authorities such as the SBS, FIU, and the Securities Market Supervisor. SUNAT has established gradual deadlines and conditions for legal persons and legal entities to present their information between the years 2022 to 2024, depending on their assets. In the year 2019, the first legal persons to give their information were the PRICOs, that are considered the principal taxpayers of Peru. According to Recommendation 2 of the FATF recommendations, countries must establish strategies or policies to mitigate the risk identified in their national risk assessments. Peru has had 2 strategies to mitigate the risk identified and now is currently working in our national policy against money laundering until 2030 that will have the actions that we hope will mitigate our money laundering risk identified in our national risk assessment of 2021. This national policy is the product of the coordinated work done between the public and the private sector. our national policy under development has identified the following public problem. Money laundering affects citizens and economic agents socioeconomically, and has established that this public problem has three effects: damages the proper function of the economic system, growth and consolidation of criminal organizations, affects the trust and legitimacy of public institutions. The desired future situation we hope our national policy creates is that by the year 2030, the incidence of money laundering will be reduced in Peru, lowering the socioeconomic impact it generates on the lives of citizens and economic agents. In this way, Peru will have achieved a decrease in the basal money laundering risk index from 4.72 in 2022 to 4.01 in 2030. The policy will establish alternative solutions with responsible parties, deadlines, and indicators. Finally, other policies linked to illegal mining and corruption are the National Strategy for the Interdiction of Illegal Mining, the National Policy Against Organized Crime, Sectoral Guideline to Fight Illegal Mining, National Multi-Sector Policy for Small Mining and Artisanal Mining by 2030, Multi-Sector Policy of Mining, National Policy of Integrity and the Fight Against Corruption by 2030. Thank you very much. I leave you my email in case you have any questions.
Fernanda is actually online, so feel free also to give a clap of applause for her. So as you have heard here from the Financial Intelligence Unit of Peru, it is very important to not only focus on corruption, but also look at money laundering risks and look at how, for example, the Financial Action Task Force standards may help us to guide also with the new risks from the just transition. So for example, be it on establishing beneficial ownership registries to increasing transparency on beneficial owners, but also of course here very important to even be aware of what is the risks. So conducting sector risk assessments or also in the national risk assessments to be looking at environmental crimes and specifically here at crimes related to the extractive sector. Now that we had taken a look on which are lessons learned that we can be drawn, let's take a step forward and let's look at what tools are out there that we can really start implementing now and be able to manage better those risks. And for that, I'm pleased to have two new ideas being presented here, and one of them being from the Natural Resource Governance Institute, where we have here Susannah Fitzgerald from the Governance Office, who will be presenting a tool that they have created to better analyze the risks of corruption in the extractive field. And with that, handing over to Susannah. Thank you.
Thanks, Sophie, and thanks to my fellow panelists as well for their important interventions so far, which I think really show the crucial moment that we're at just now when it comes to mining sector corruption and its impact on both people and planet. So I don't need to tell the people in the room that fighting corruption is a complex task, and I think Bady put it well when he said that there's no silver bullet. So recognizing that and the fact that this complexity can at times be overwhelming for anti-corruption actors who want to ensure progress on this issue. In 2021, with the support of GIZ, NRGI developed an anti-corruption or a corruption diagnostic tool, I should say, that helps anti-corruption actors, whether in civil society, in government, in business, whoever really wants to drive reform on this issue, and particularly those who want to work together to drive reform, to try to break down this big question of anti-corruption and find a place to start and find it kind of a more manageable way to tackle this issue. So the tool that we developed helps users to identify the most pressing corruption risks across the industry value chain, to build support amongst the key decision makers that can bring reforms to life, and crucially to prioritize actions that are impactful but also achievable. And so this week we're relaunching this tool, bringing in new guidance on really pressing topics that we've found coming up time and time again. So corruption in the ASM sector, the intersection between corruption and environmental and human rights abuses, and of course the way that corruption can impede our efforts to phase out fossil fuels. We've also updated the methodology of the tool, bringing in insights and feedback from users in 5 different countries. And we're actually going to hear from one of those users now. So my colleague, Mohammed Cise, who's our Guinea Programme Associate, has kindly recorded a video for us talking about his experience leading one of these diagnostic processes, looking into Guinea's bauxite sector. Thanks.
L'outil de diagnostic de corruption élaboré par NRGI en Guinée a été utilisé par le Collège des représentants de la société civile au sein du comité de pilotage de l'initiative de transparence des industries extractives. Avec donc l'appui technique de NRGI, l'utilisation de cet outil a permis d'identifier les formes de corruption les plus préoccupantes liées à l'industrie de la bauxite, à diagnostiquer leurs causes et à élaborer un plan d'intervention pour prévenir ces pratiques. Et tout au long du processus, ce collège de la société civile s'est appliqué à engager les parties prenantes, notamment les agences gouvernementales, et dans un premier temps, en cherchant à les mobiliser pour obtenir leur adhésion et soutien par rapport au projet, les invitant ainsi à s'asseoir autour de la table pour discuter des pratiques et risques de corruption identifiés, et ensemble proposer des interventions pour y remédier. Et durant ce processus, NRGI, en tant qu'appui technique, s'est évertué à renforcer les capacités et à outiller ces acteurs pour, si vous voulez, pérenniser cette dynamique à travers les initiatives futures qui seront portées par ces acteurs du changement. Donc, en termes d'intervention proprement dite, il a été proposé au ministre des Mines de soulever, à l'occasion de la réunion du Conseil du cabinet ministériel, la nécessité d'engager des réformes pour réviser la procédure cadastrale en vue d'intégrer des délais de traitement standards à toutes les étapes du processus et plus largement de favoriser la digitalisation du processus. Et quant au directeur général du centre du CPDM, il lui a été proposé de sensibiliser ses agents par rapport aux risques de corruption identifiés et, n'est-ce pas, de promouvoir la culture d'éthique et d'intégrité durant le processus de traitement des dossiers. Et s'agissant du secrétaire exécutif de l'ANLC, il lui a été proposé, dans un premier temps, de prendre connaissance de cette forme de corruption et plus largement de sensibiliser les agents publics qui pourraient être tentés de se livrer à de telles pratiques corrompues. Donc, en résumé, par rapport à chacune des formes de corruption priorisées, des actions ont été définies. On sait que des personnes physiques responsables devant intervenir au cours d'une période définie, assortie des indicateurs de progrès permettant de suivre et évaluer la mise en œuvre de plans d'intervention. Pour terminer, un élément important à souligner, c'est de dire que la mise en œuvre du plan d'intervention en tant que tel constitue un défi plus grand que le diagnostic lui-même, qui aura notamment permis de produire le plan d'intervention.
Also, a round of applause. Thank you. And without further ado, let me also introduce you to, well, Brooke, I don't have to introduce you anymore, but the USAID has also launched a challenge on how to deal with corruption in the extractive sector, and let her also present what they have done there. Handing over to you, Brooke.
Thanks so much, Sophie. So I think I used up all my time with my technological learnings. So without further ado, I will share a brief video with one of the 11 winners of the Powering a Just Energy Transition Green Minerals Challenge, Tobi Oluwatole, who is the Executive Director of the Center for Journalism, Innovation and Development in Nigeria, and also participating online today.
Africa has a role to play in the global race to net zero. However, the continent's huge deposits of green minerals have not contributed significantly to the energy transition so far, nor created prosperity for the host countries. This, we argue, is due to large-scale corruption and a mining sector that is fraught with conflict and human rights abuses. We know that sunlight is the best disinfectant, which is why the Center for Journalism, Innovation and Development is leveraging data, civic technology, investigative journalism, and capacity building to shed sunlight on the green mineral sectors in Nigeria, Ghana, Democratic Republic of Congo, and Mozambique. Our solution stands out because it relies on 3 key levers. The first is data and civic technology. By building a green minerals open data portal and publishing data related to mining activities, we will increase transparency in the sector and reduce the likelihood of corruption going unnoticed. Our innovative approach is to engage local journalists who will conduct deep dives to pave the way and establish findings that can help build these frameworks to reduce corruption. The third is inclusion. Our project is unique because we're big on inclusion. We're including women, youth, and persons with disabilities in the design, implementation, and every other stage to ensure that no group is left out. At CJID, we're excited to be part of the Jet Minerals cohort, where 10 other dynamic actors are also leveraging new and proven approaches to fight corruption in the green mineral supply chain. We look forward to opportunities for collaboration. For instance, in DRC, we will share data and amplify the work of Resource Matters, Impact, and Bases International. We will also leverage best practice approaches from the community agreement transparency processes being developed by the Manila Observatory in the Philippines to the responsible mining business integrity tool being developed by Transparency International. We are convinced that the future we envision, a future that is green, prosperous, and just, is possible. We're equally convinced that Africa, with its vast mineral resources, will play a role in catalyzing this future. Together, we can make a just energy transition possible.
Also, a round of applause for Tobi. So as we have heard here as well, although we are facing great challenges, we also already have very creative groups coming together and really coming up with new ideas on how to do that. And I think what we heard here that is very important for us to keep in mind is that, of course, multi-stakeholder engagement is very important. We have to speak to each other. I mean, we have already seen here at the conference, we had the private sector forum, the civil society forum. So we really have to engage in conversations and then together come into solutions that really all of us can profit. But we still have a bit of time, so since we have here our experts, I would like to open the floor for questions. And then, so any questions that you would like to place to our panelists?
We also have some experts on the floor, so interventions are also possible.
Okay, we have a few here, first hand here.
Karina Gilfillan from the UNCAC Coalition. I have a question for Brooke. I just wondered, it's great to see the U.S. government on USAID taking all these initiatives on the corruption and environment issue, and I just wondered what the U.S. government is thinking as far as how to really use the UNCAC to tackle corruption that's affecting the environment, particularly related to this cost, but also future costs. How does the UNCAC fit into the U.S. government? What's your position? What do you hope to see through the UNCAC process? Thanks.
Thank you for your questions. Due to time, I will take all the other questions and then we'll get back. There was one behind there as well. If you could steal a microphone. Also, please introduce yourself shortly.
Yeah, sure. So, hello, I am KM from Transparency International and also Publish What You Pay. Thanks a lot for the brilliant interventions. And I was just wondering if there is a kind of network already active right now for the nexus created, between environmental crimes, the extractive industry, and also human rights and anti-corruption. I think that all of these are tightly linked because most of the time when we think of these issues and also the devastative effects of corruption, the victims are the communities mostly. So that would be great to have a community of practitioners as well, thinking about those fundamental rights. And also the other thing is I'd like to have your opinion on how we can connect the climate COP and the CoSP, because I think there has to be a connection between the work we are all doing against corruption, but also with the work against climate change, because if we don't build bridges, you know, we are losing time and energy, and the planet is, vanishing. Thank you.
Thank you. And then here, and then there, but please keep your question short, just due to time. And last question with my colleague.
Okay, thank you. Raphael Edu, Environmental Investigation Agency, Washington, D.C. Thank you for your presentation, and I have 2 points. First, one aspect of the corruption is when the environmental agencies of a country, they are not able to check, to follow up the mitigation measure about the impact of mining industry. They close their eyes. Why? And local communities, they are suffering. So companies, they make a lot of money and leave the place for pollution, a lot of problem in the future. The second question is, I think, in addition to the report, which is a good thing, that will be, we will make more impact if we can help also countries to follow the flow of exploitation of the natural resources, because the way it's happening now, in the future, they don't have they want to be able to cover their domestic needs. Thank you.
Thank you. And then one question there and there. Please introduce yourself. Also, please keep the question short. Thanks.
My name is Ismail Kusemerera, and I'm from Uganda. As you know, Uganda is one of those countries that is having a number of natural resources, including most recently the exploration of oil and gas and other extractives. My question is in relation to developing countries like my country, Uganda, and others, especially in Africa, that are not so much rich in terms of wealth, to the extent that some of these companies that are involved, the private sector players that are involved in extractives, like Total and the others, are far much richer in terms of wealth compared to the countries. I mean, if you looked at Uganda's GDP, Total in terms of its worth could even be more than Uganda's GDP. So how can countries of that nature and the civil society organizations in those countries counter such wealth and power of such companies that are doing extraction of minerals in those countries? Thank you.
Thank you very much. And last questions, Viola.
Thank you very much. My name is Viola Charo from GIZ, the Global Program on Combating Illicit Financial Flows. My question relates to, the role that African Union would play. What would be your opinion in terms of what African Union can do for the region, which is Africa, in supporting countries to combat corruption and money laundering in the extractive industries? And a second question would be then, because then you have the Great Lakes region, which needs proper assistance. So what kind of guidance would you give the African Union, specifically the Economic, Tourism, Trade, Industry and Mining Department, to support these countries, and then more specific to the Great Lakes region? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will be handing over the questions. Please, to the panel, keep it short. I would start with Brooke to take on the question of the US government, maybe Susannah on the network, also linked to human rights. Then Bady, maybe the question from the environmental agency on the impact of the industry, also maybe taking over the question on companies. And then lastly, also from the Great Lake region, but maybe also Giancarlo on the topic of how to engage with companies and what the government can do. Thank you. Starting with Brooke.
Okay, recognizing we have 1 minute left before we transition this stage, I will just say that I think that UNCAC's critical for setting the standards and the measures that will guide how we implement this at the country level. Quick, simple answer, but I think it's absolutely key.
Thank you, Susannah.
Thanks. Yeah, in terms of the network question, I think actually the UNCAC Coalition is doing a really brilliant job of this just now. We've got the Environmental Crime and Corruption Working Group, which Lisa there chairs. I believe there's a new Human Rights and Corruption Working Group as well. But yes, I fully agree with you that we need to do more to connect these agendas, and that's something that we're thinking about at NRGI with this new research to accompany our corruption diagnostic tool, which will also be building into a bigger briefing next year as well. And just to very briefly touch on the points from Raphael and Ismail, I think that at NRGI, we really firmly believe that we can't just work on anti-corruption, we also have to work on the broader economic development perspective in countries that are rich in minerals or any other natural resource. And the question of value addition and a far fairer deal than there has been in the past is really essential if this is to be in any way a just energy transition going forward. Thanks.
Thanks, Susannah, then Bady, and then Giancarlo.
Yeah, thank you. So perhaps I can start from the last. For the African Union, they're already doing a lot of work in this area. I think from the mining visions all the way to the mineral resource center and so on, we do collaborate with them to some extent, and we are aligned in building on each other's effort. But I recognize their work, and I agree with you, there is more work to be done there. Similarly, with ICGLR, it's an organization in the region where we work closely with, which encourages its members to adopt the EITI standard, which we then support implementation of. Which brings me to the Uganda question. The quick answer there is actually, Uganda is now an EITI member country with a multi-sector group there. And that is an opportunity to use that space to create that level, a certain degree of equal playing field for it. It's certainly a space that is underutilized right now from that perspective. We accept the challenge about civic space, that is well noted, but there is still, we can work together, especially right now, we are going through actually a validation process where we ask the countries to show how they are adhering to their commitment, both in terms of principles and requirement. And one last point on this community of practice as well. This is something here, I think there are so many synergies that can be built. We are here to learn from many others. Ourselves, we have what we call a critical mineral network, which is how we try to advance issues. We had one for contract transparency. Those of you who follow us closely know we have one on commodity trading and so on. So, but we certainly don't need to duplicate. So if there are those that already exist, we're happy to build on those. Thanks.
Thank you so much, my speakers, for addressing those questions so quickly. However, we are open for conversation. I think today's day, already starting in the morning and going into the afternoon, shows us the first step of, the governance community and the environment community coming together. I think, of course, there's other issues as, social justice, inequality, human rights abuses that we have to keep in mind. But yeah, thank you so much for your patience. I hope you learned a lot out of that. I surely did. Special thanks for all my esteemed speakers who joined the session today. And I still wish you a successful CoSP. Thank you.